everyone. My name is Stephanie LeBlanc, and I'm the Global Head of Inclusion for Women of Color at Google. I am so excited for the conversation that we will have today, and so excited that we were able to bring our special guest here. Although it's virtual, we are still happy to be in her presence, and I know that her energy will be felt throughout the screen. So without further ado, I will introduce Brittany Levers, who is serving as our moderator for today's talk. Brittany?
Hey everyone, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. My name is Brittany, I sit at Google, home base is New York City. I'm an enterprise field sales recruiter on the cloud diversity team, and I am excited to introduce Bevy Smith. And I wanted to switch things up a bit. Hello, Beverly.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
Many of us know who you are, some of us may not. We have a habit of reducing ourselves to what we do for a living rather than emphasizing the experiences that shape who we are. So before introducing yourself and reminding the audience of your work, could you please tell us who you are?
Oh, I'm Little Brown Bevy. I am a girl from 150th Street and 8th Avenue who grew up with two wonderful parents. I'm the baby of 3 children. I'm curious, I'm adventurous, I'm empathetic, and I'm stylish. And, Harlem is my heart, it is my home, and it's the place that really has shaped me and made me the woman that I am today.
I absolutely love that. And before we get into things, I wanted to ask, how are your energy levels today? How are you feeling? How's your heart?
I'm feeling much better. I took my second Moderna shot on Sunday. So if this had been happening yesterday, it would not have been happening because I was flat out laid out on the bed. But today it's like weird. They say it's only going to last 24 hours, the backlash of taking the vaccine. And yeah, it seems they were right because I'm great today. So thank you for asking.
Oh, of course. Good. I'm good to hear. So you're Moderna mommy, as Black Twitter likes to call it.
Yes, I'm a Moderna mommy.
I'm a Pfizer poppy.
I'm a Moderna mommy. I'm a Moderna mommy. I'm glad I was the Johnson & Johnson, gigolo or jelly.
I called it the Johnson Jigger.
I'm glad I wasn't in that group.
Absolutely. I want to touch I want to really dive deep into your book. Read your book over the past month, and I saw a lot of myself within your book. So in your book, you share a lot of lessons of self-discovery, authenticity, risk-taking, and resilience. Within some of the lessons I've noticed, you prioritize developing and strengthening relationships first within yourself, but also others. So in your world of advertising, fashion advertising specifically, you were invested in many of your client relationships. To name one, Gucci. You mentioned for every genuine connection, there's a lot of forced relationships, which ultimately led to your discovery that you had to resign from your job in fashion to continue to practice your truth. So one of the questions I have for you, how did you navigate performative relationships in your time as a fashion executive at Rolling Stone and Vibe? And being the woman that you are now, how would you change the way you've approached those forced relationships?
Oh, wow, that's a good question, Brittany. Damn. Okay, let me think. Deep. Brittany got her on her Oprah Winfrey hat, child. I'm feeling like Meghan Markle up in here.
Hello.
Okay.
What?
Yes. What? I'm triggered now. No, but I guess the way I would have changed the way I approached my relationships when I was in fashion was I had a lot to do, not so much with the way I interacted with my clients, but the way I interacted with my family and with people who worked with me. I was really tough, and I was really all about my bottom line, AKA the coins. And I really relished that persona because that was the persona of a hard-charging, successful fashion advertising salesperson. That's what you were supposed to do. You were supposed to hit your quota. You were supposed to hit your quota and get bonuses. And that's all that was the gig was really about. So it was always a very hollow feeling because you would literally hit your number and they would say, great, that is so awesome. Thank you so much. What do you have for next month? And, there was literally no time to even feel happy or proud of what you accomplished. It was simply, okay, well, what else you got, And so I think for me, I spent so much time focused on, securing the bag, making sure I hit my numbers, that I really didn't develop the best relationships with people who worked with me. They didn't really get to see the full sum total of who I am. And especially in my familial relationships, because I was so driven in that respect, I missed a lot of birthdays, anniversaries, really big major life events, because I would sometimes be, in January, it's my mom's birthday and my best friend's birthday. Well, guess what? Milan Fashion Week happens the same week as their birthdays. So I would simply tell myself, well, I can't be there for their birthdays because I have my career, darling. You know what I mean? And I could see you missing one of those things, or maybe missing them for 1 year. But this was like every year for like 6 years, I was just not around. And as we know from this past year, 2020, is that, we cannot take any of the people in our lives for granted, because at any moment they could be taken away from us. So I really do regret that. And that's something how I would have really changed the way I interacted. I would have been better about being present, physically. And also just when I was there, I would show up as my fullest self versus just kind of like this persona that I had created. Brittany, as you know, I wrote in the book about how oftentimes we create these personas for work, and then they become these gilded cages. They work for us professionally, but what are they doing to our souls? What are they doing to our spirits? And so I did need to resign from that lifestyle so that I could show up as Lulu Brown Bevy, as a mentor, as a guide, as a teacher, and as someone who connects with people and is not so driven by the dollar sign and by the check.
I love that. It reminds me of literally maybe 2 weeks ago, I did a little exercise with my best friend. I don't know what the exercise is called, but his therapist had us do it. It's just like mapping out your ecosystem. So you write down the people who are most important to you and your family, your social life, and in the context of the folks that are most important to you at work, and then mapping out how do you want to navigate those relationships, how do you want to be better and show up, or how do you want to get rid of those relationships. So
yes.
yeah, so that reminds me of some of the activities I did 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and I definitely did have to weed out some people, because when I did decide to change my life and to go from being so very focused on the check and working in corporate America, and when I decided to go for a more creative life, there were a lot of people who knew me from the hard charging fashion executive, and they just really didn't connect with the more creative free spirit. But I really do believe, Brittany, is that one of the reasons why they didn't connect with that spirit is because I reminded them of all the things they weren't doing in their lives.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that that's always tough. And we've all experienced that when people around us change. And sometimes it's not for the good, but even when it is something that's a positive change, sometimes that can take us through a little like, wait a minute, what's happening here? And we have to get our bearings. And we also have to check our temperature to make sure we're not feeling this way out of jealousy, resentment. And these are things that just creep up in the spirit in a very subtle way. But we always, for me, that's why introspective work is so important, because I always try to make sure that what I'm feeling is coming from a positive place. And if it's not, I check myself and try and get my mind right.
Yes. I was like, what's causing this? What is the root of this? I absolutely love that. I want to tackle something more about work, and something that hit a nerve for me in my past life. In your book, you had mentioned that most companies aren't truly invested in your personal development unless your personal development helps their bottom line and aligns with their corporate ethos. So you reluctantly left Vibe magazine and Rolling Stone later and learned that the job is just a paycheck. And so I have about 2 questions for you. As a creative and someone who thrives on relationships, did you or how did you reposition your thinking while doing a job that didn't fulfill you? So how did you sustain yourself emotionally while getting the job that you knew wasn't for you?
I'm in New York City, in Harlem, so forgive my ambulance. So how that sustained my emotional health in a position that wasn't emotionally healthy? Is that the question?
Yes. Yes.
I have to tell you though, Brittany, I was miserable, and I was a misery to many other people. And I think that that's something else that we need to start dealing with. You
Mhm.
know, there's always going to be a day of reckoning. And you don't want to wait until someone forces that day of reckoning on you. I think it's best to, when you're unhappy, when you're acting out in your professional life or in your personal life, and you know you're doing things that are not good for you, you're not treating people as well as you would like, you really do have to examine why. And for me, I was just a miserable person. I had 10 assistants in the span of 5 years.
Oh man.
Obviously, Houston, we have a problem. And it's not them. Now, I will say some of them were major. Okay. But, but, you know, as many of them that have come back to me and said, I learned so much under your wing, you know, you really taught me hard work, or you taught me, you know, I taught them a lot of things, right? But was it worth it, those times when I used to, you know, kind of make their life a living hell because I was under pressure to bring in, you know, a certain amount of money. And then also I was also unhappy. So there were two things at play. So when you ask me how I managed my emotional health in a space where I was emotionally unfulfilled, I didn't manage my emotional health at all. I just kind of rode that wave of like misery. And I, in turn, was not a great person to be around. And that's not a great thing to have to say to yourself. Even now, it makes me flinch. Even now, I kind of wanted to sugarcoat it. Like, no, I'm kind of.
No sugarcoat. Keep
no,
100 only. 100 usher bucks.
Yeah, that's the work that I've done. I have to be honest. But it's not always comfortable. And so that's why the folks that are watching us, I urge you all to do that kind of work. You know, in the book, as you know, Brittany, the 3 questions: who are you at your core? How are you being perceived? How would you like to be perceived? That second one, how are you being perceived, is the one that trips everyone up, because no one wants to talk about how they might be perceived in a negative fashion. Everyone wants to just jump over that or make it seem like it's someone else's fault or something like that. But I urge people to think about if there's, you know, and not obviously not everyone in your life has a right to have an opinion about you, because a lot of times folks don't even know you well enough to have a real opinion. But if there are people in your life that you love or even just respect, and it's coming up time and again, then maybe you're a little harsh. Oh, maybe you could have said that in a better way. Oh, if your management calls you into the office and said, you're doing such a great job, but, and this happens time and again, you need to look at yourself.
I agree. I sometimes think that we shouldn't even have to wait till things get that bad for someone to approach us, to call us out for an area of opportunity. For me personally, in my friendships, I try to take the context of like performance review, but apply it to the context of work. Yeah. And so periodically, I check in with like my closest of circles, like, hey, how can I be a better friend to you?
Wow. But I like that idea. What I try to do, which is kind of similar to that, is that I will check in with my friends, and I will say to them, you know, I'm here for you if you need me, and I mean that sincerely. I will say that, and I guess that's kind of like in the same kind of vein as what you do,
yep.
Brittany. But yep. Yeah, I do believe you have to put effort into that.
Yep, it's a two-way street. You know, like, let's not wait until things hit rock bottom. Let's wait while things are cool, because it's easier to grow. It's easier to strengthen relationships from there. Yeah. And I want to actually jump a couple of questions, because you mentioned the red soul proposition. And then so I wanted to give some context about that. So you work on the board of Cool Culture, which is a charity devoted to raising awareness among children who are underprivileged. You often speak with children who have like a limited sight to exposure and the possibilities of what they can become. And we often are limited to becoming a doctor, lawyer, teacher, which is nothing wrong with that, but we literally can be anything that we want to be. And I'd say that the experience of this is, for many of us, including myself, and that when we're conditioned to believe that we can only be one thing, but our lives are not so linear, and we're actually multidimensional, especially as women. So, and it's the self-discovery, what I call the self-discovery activity, which is you said the red soul proposition. So could you get more into that with our audience who hasn't read your book yet, about revisit those 3 core questions and what does each practice entail within those questions?
Yeah. So the red soul proposition is basically what I call a brand building kind of exercise. Once upon a time, Manolo Blahnik was the hottest shoe in the fashion business. And then all of a sudden, Louboutin came and usurped their position. Now, why is that? Louboutin is a great shoe, but what really set it apart from every other shoe, and including Manolo Blahnik, is that it had a red sole. So when I was creating my own business, Dinner with Bevy, I had to figure out what would be my red sole, because I wanted people to pay me a higher fee than what they would pay a traditional PR marketing person, even though I was just hosting a dinner. And I wasn't doing PR, but I was connecting the dots. And that's a very ethereal thing, what I was doing, the work I was doing. And so I was like, well, I need to create my red soul. And what's my red soul proposition? So I asked myself 3 questions. Who am I at my core? And at my core, as I introduced myself when we first started, is Little Brown Bevy. How am I being perceived? Now, once upon a time, I was received as a biatch, like really hardcore. It was not, I don't think that you would have met a lot of people. They would have said I was nice and that I was cool and I was funny, but they wouldn't have necessarily been like, she's the person I'm going to call if I get into something, because I really didn't have time. I probably, if someone had called me with an emergency, I would have been like, let me check my calendar, which is not the way I ever wanted to be. Okay, so that's how I was perceived. How did I want to be perceived? As someone who was a positive influence in other people's lives, someone that you could rely on, someone that you could call and she would be there for you. And I also wanted people to understand that I was a creative. Yes, I was very good at numbers and had done, so I had so much great success in advertising, but I also knew inside of me there was a writer, there was someone who was an actor, there was a full creative there. And so I started doing that work. And what I found is that once I started letting the core of who I am show up, once Little Brown Bevy started showing up everywhere, not just in my romantic relationships, not just in my familial relationships, but also in my profession, in my business, it really did take off, and it really did make a difference, because then people started to think of me, as Brittany said, multidimensional, and not just in that one space. Because, fashion is, especially if you've ever seen The Devil Wears Prada, it's a very, and fashion is it's a tough business, as is advertising, especially as a Black woman. And so I wanted to make sure that people knew I wasn't just this like Teflon chick, I also rebuffed the whole title, that trope of the strong Black woman. In my book, I talk about the vulnerability and how much strength there is in being vulnerable and letting your guard down. And what we will find is that so many of us are far stronger than we ever thought. But it's when you let yourself be vulnerable that you can really find your true strength. And so all of that is in the Red Soul proposition in my book. But it really is about trying to develop who you truly are, so that then you can go out into the world and present. And then once you present, the world opens up.
Could you elaborate more in your time in the fashion, especially working in fashion advertising, how you were received? Because in your book, you're talking about a lot back in the early 2000s where we weren't as progressive. We were still like, straight sizes only, still definitely loads of colorism. And here you are, a confident Black and curvy Black woman, and, no one literally can intimidate you. So how were you received? How did people react to you and react to your presence?
The interesting thing, Brittany, is that when I would go over to Europe, Milan and Paris predominantly, they would automatically think that I was an entertainer, because they had never really seen a Black woman kind of show up in the way that I was showing up. You think about it, there is no urban culture there's no real Black culture in Europe. Like, of course, there are Black people there, but they don't. You see, our culture in America is all Black culture, really. Black culture is pop culture. And so when we show up, people recognize, you know what I mean? But there, they had never seen a Black woman, roll up in a Mercedes sedan, check into one of the biggest suites in the, you know, the best hotel in the city, and, you know, go into all these stores and like have everyone waiting on you hand and foot and all that kind of stuff. So they just assumed I was a damn celebrity. They were like, "Oh, you are a singer, cantina?" I'm like, "No, I'm an executress." So that was always interesting. And then in America, they automatically assumed that if I worked in fashion, I worked in streetwear, which was then called urban wear. And the irony of it is that at Vibe magazine, the woman who sold streetwear was a white woman from like Minneapolis, and I was a Black woman from Harlem selling luxury fashion. So it was like really, you know, Freaky Friday. It's like, oh, okay. But they never really expected it. But then once they understood what I was doing, because the way I presented was very different than the way they expected any person, Black or white, to present sales, because I took over my history. So when I'm going over to Milan and Paris, understanding that they're not used to seeing Black people except in kind of lower level kind of positions, because you have to think about the immigration situation in those countries, which was far worse back then. I would take over James Van Der Zee books so they could see the Harlem Renaissance. I would take over Zora Neale Hurston books. I would take over, you know, I would take photos of my community so they could see us and all that beautiful, vibrant color of my community. And I would explain to them, because oftentimes, again, they would think I was just like this anomaly. They would be like, "Oh my gosh, they must be so impressed with you at home." And I'd be like, "Well, no, not really. I'm just like another chick from 150th Street and 8th Avenue. There's a lot of us there."
Yes, yes. Immersive experience in Hong Kong, and also too, like in Asia too. There's definitely a Black culture presence in in East Asia. And so when I went, I guess they're still not used to seeing Black folks over there. And I kept getting called Beyonce, which is like I don't look like Beyonce, but I'll take it at all.
That's the only thing that they could do. They're like, "She's Black, you're Black, Beyonce," and that's all they knew. And that's really sad, because when you went there, I mean, that was like
2016.
Okay, come on now. They should know better than now. But those are the things that we still are up against, that we're still fighting against. And then, of course, when you look at a lot of Europe, they're still not even dealing with the fact that there's racism and colorism. They just refuse to even acknowledge it. So
yes. So this whole discourse with Trump being formally in office, saying that a lot of Black folks were going to flee to Europe because the quality of life is better, and I'm like, maybe with your food, but it's just a different flavor of racism.
Right? Exactly.
You know. I would love to talk about in your book when there's concept of happy mediums. So happy mediums playing in my head. So you are a big family woman. I also want to give tribute to your father. Your father is now our ancestor who passed away about approximately a year ago. And your family was your support system and vice versa, financially and emotionally. And then, so you mentioned that with happy mediums, we use excuses like, "Oh, this is a great, good salary job," or like, this is better than what I had from the last time. And for me, I know I personally struggle with like entertaining my dreams, which is working in food media, home and garden, versus being dedicated to my family's financial future. And then, so as having the responsibility as an eldest immigrant, first generation daughter to my family, what advice would you give to Black women and women of color who are in roles that aren't fulfilling but do have a financial responsibility to their families?
That is very, very tough. That is very tough, because I was very blessed and fortunate to have a family that never actually asked me for anything. I
Mm-hmm.
simply saw a need and I filled it. Now, when you're talking about someone who may actually be needed to contribute to the family so that the family can have a roof over their head or food to eat and things like that, I will tell you this: you cannot take it all on yourself. Like, there has to be another way. You have to find that way, because I was my friend Midwin Charles just passed away.
Oh, my
And
condolences.
thank you. And she was an amazing legal analyst on MSNBC and CNN, all these different things. And she lived a beautiful, vibrant life. And she was a primary caregiver to her mom. Like, they lived in the house together. And Midwin always made sure that her mother was well taken care of and had everything that she needed. And I find that to be so beautiful, because I live kind of like in the same way. You know, I'm always trying to make sure that my mom is good now that my dad is no longer here, especially. But I will say that there is something to making sure that you're being a little selfish. You're taking something for yourself. Mibam was 47 years old, and she's no longer with us. You know, we all have dreams and goals and aspirations, and we oftentimes have to juggle that with also the day-to-day realities of the things that we need to get done. But I have to say that we cannot allow familial obligations, because a lot of times I find that a lot of these things that we take them on ourselves. Is there no one else in the family that can help X, Y, and Z? Why is it your job to make sure that your little sister is going to college? Is she doing everything that she can to get a scholarship? I mean, there's a myriad of things that go on, right? So we can never really tell, but what I will tell you is this: it is important that women stop sacrificing themselves for everyone else in their life. We do it constantly. We do it time and again. Men go off and live their lives. You know, there's a choices you have to make. You know, what would happen if you gave 50% less? What would happen if maybe you gave only 30% less? You know, but you have to take something for yourself. And it's really, really tough. But, you know, Midwin's passing, because she was only 47 years old, it really just has stuck with me. It's like, wow, you could not be here. And then what have you done the things that you want to do? Have you accomplished the things? And something else I talk about in the book is that oftentimes, as women of color and Black women specifically, we feel very guilty when we have these good jobs and we no longer want them. Because who are we to say no to something that most people would dream of? Who are we? No, I'm my ancestors' wildest dreams. Yes, I get that. But I bet if my ancestors had lived in this time, they would have wanted more from me. They would have wanted me to be going out and daring to dream. You know, you think about your white counterparts. You think about the fact that many of them were able to take a gap year. You think about the fact that after they graduated from college, maybe they did take a year off. You think about all this freedom that many people have just inherently. And you think about the restrictions that are put on us, sometimes by the culture, but a lot of times by what we perceive as what we need to be doing for others. Well, I say that being selfish is one of the greatest luxuries that a woman could ever have, far more than a Birkin bag. That's a luxury.
Yes.
You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And time waits for no one. I mean, you know, I don't want to have something happen to me and not be able to do all the things that I wanted to do and be sitting here thinking about the fact that, oh yeah, I didn't do that, put that off because, you know, my sister needed blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, like we got to figure something out, but it can't just be all on me.
So what I'm hearing is that really harnessing whatever collective resources you can from your family. So the pressure's not all on you. Someone can do something, whether it's real minute or something grand, and they take on full responsibility, or they take responsibility later so you can focus on yourself.
Yes, and how many of us actually ask for help? You know, oftentimes when you're the one who makes the most money in a family, you don't even ask for help. Well, I have news for you. I ask for help all the time. I will tell my family when I need something. And it doesn't have to be a monetary something, but it could just be simply like, oh, can you come and sit in my apartment because someone's coming to fix it? And I need to go and do X, Y, and Z. Like it has to be a reciprocal, it has to be a give and take. And I find that oftentimes when you are the one who makes the most money out of a family, you don't ask for help because you think that you are there to help everyone, and you put yourself on an island.
Yep. You know what? So ask for more, especially as Black women. Ask for more without
Ask
guilt.
for help.
Ask for more. Ask for help. Yes. Or if you're doing, ask for more help if you feel like you're not getting enough.
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely. I wanted to talk about mentorships and champions. So you initially started and kicked off your advertising career at Peter Rogers and Associates. And then typically, as just psychology, we typically gravitate to people who look most like us, who have the most similar background experiences and hardships. And then you also had this experience at work being the only one in a corporate setting. So, but you had mentors that did not look like you. You had mentors that had privilege and had a complete different experience. Could you talk about more about that and the necessity of learning from someone outside your inherent ecosystem?
Oh yeah, the best thing I ever learned from my mentor Jeff McKay, who was a wasp, who was so waspy that his family came over on the Mayflower, and he had like a certificate, which of course now is a negative thing to have a certificate like that. But back then it was like a big source of pride. It was like, yes, I'm a true American. We know now, of course. Come on. But back then, yeah. So this was a man who came from that kind of stock. But for some reason, and he was also from Indiana, which is like the headquarters of the Klan. I don't even know how he became so open-minded, because I won't call him liberal, because I find that oftentimes liberal is code word for patronizing and racist and just, you know, with gift wrapping on it. So he wasn't a liberal. He was just a humanist, and he saw me. But the best part about it is he saw me as someone who didn't need his help, but he saw me as someone who deserved access that he could simply give me.
Got it.
Go
ahead. No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
And he did that. He opened so many doors for me constantly and consistently. And the best part of him being a mentor is that he has never once taken credit for my success. And oftentimes we will have people that will have made one phone call for us, so, you know, to someone that we were applying a job for, and they will simply go, after we make it, well, you know, I'm the person, the reason why they got that job. It's like, you made one phone call, sweetie. Don't do it. But Jeff has never tried to take credit for my success, even though he was the one who saw me as an 18-year-old receptionist and knew I was smart enough to become an executive. And he's the one that when he opened up his own ad agency, he took me with him and he said, what position would you like? What area do you want to work in advertising? And then when I went to NYU while I was working full time, he was the one who supported me. And then he was like, okay, well, now you keep missing meetings. So. And I yelled at him, but he was so great. I was able to yell at him because I said to him, I have to finish my degree because he's like, you don't need that degree. You're smart and you could teach that course. And I was like, that's easy for you to say. You're a white man. No one's going to check if you don't have a degree. And I was yelling at him and he was like, well, I don't know what to tell you, but you keep missing these meetings. So, I mean, and I need to send you, you know, on these trips and, you know. And so that's actually the reason why I didn't complete my degree, because it was actually I was working full time in the day, and then I was going to school at night. But as everyone knows, in the kind of careers, and also just in careers in general, the work doesn't stop at 5 o'clock. So if I had a class at 6 that went until 10, I was missing a lot of valuable face time with clients and different things like that. So I don't regret it, but I would never advise that for anyone else, because I was just very fortunate that I had someone who gave me such a big position without a degree. So then by the time I had to leave his employment, I was able to go to Vibe with a big title and also with a huge amount of contacts. And that's all that was needed. But as you know from in the book, I think I wrote about this in the book, when I got to Rolling Stone, they definitely told me, well, they pursued me. They came, they came to my door asking me to go to work for them. And when I accepted the position, I went to meet with HR, and she was like, "Oh, you didn't put down when you graduated." And I said, "Oh, that's because I didn't." And she said, "Well, this position requires a 4-year degree." I said, "I bet it does, but you should probably talk to the publisher of Rolling Stone and ask him if I need a 4-year degree to do this job."
Come on, sis. Come on.
And then I never heard from them again, and I had the job. Yeah, so there's that.
Yes. The word that stuck out to me is access. So what if you don't have someone that sees you, that sees that potential that you have, that sees that talent? How do we, let's connect access with advocacy. How do you ask for access? How do you, if you were Bevy at that age, how would you approach that?
Oh, I would definitely seek out people. Ebony K. Williams, who's she has a show on Revolt. She's a lawyer, and she's about to be on Real Housewives of New York. Don't hold that against her. She's amazing. But she, when I met her, it was because she came up to me on the street, and she was like telling me she had just come to New York and she admired my career, and just was lovely. And then I gave her my phone number. And over the years, like, I've had her come on my show to promote her book and different things like that. So she actually sought out someone, me, that had access. And she, she showed and proved that she was worthy of me taking the time and taking the chance to put her on my radio show. So I always tell people that you do have to seek that kind of thing out. But I will also say I'm not a person who's a big believer in networking, because networking tends to be very predatory. And so for me, I much prefer to try to develop organic relationships. I'll give you a perfect example. When I started going into TV and doing all these entertainment interviews and different things like that, I would get invited to a lot of parties and things. And so I had this rule where if I was chatting with a celebrity and it went really well, especially around Oscar time, because it's back-to-back parties in LA. It goes really well. You have a great conversation with Viola Davis. And then you go to another party, another night, and you see Viola Davis again, and you say hi, and maybe you're at the bar, and you have another great conversation. Traditionally, by the third or fourth time that you've had a conversation with someone and it's been good and you haven't asked for anything, those people will now earmark you as someone who they will say they know. They will think of you as an associate. And once you're in the associate space, then you can move into the friend space. And then once you're a friend, baby, the door's wide open. You have all the access. But that's something that I do not just with celebrities. That's something I do whenever I encounter anyone. You and I, we are starting a relationship right now. Earlier today, you sent me a lovely, lovely note. We had a phone call a couple of weeks ago. So now we're moving into a friendship space. And please believe that if you ever needed anything, you could call me, because we've developed that kind of a relationship. But it does take time. And I find that oftentimes people think that it's as easy as meeting someone who's in a high power position, following up with a note. Those things are good. But for me, it's more about the connection. And the connection is authentic. And the connection can't really be it can't be plotted out. It has to be, yeah. It just has to be like the note that you wrote me today touched me so much. And I don't believe that that was a strategic move on your part. It touched me. So, you know, that to me is like, you're going to jump a couple of rungs, Brittany.
Listen, I couldn't help when you paid tribute to your father at the end of the book. I started crying because it reminded me of the relationship that I have with my father and the sacrifices that my family has made for me to be here in the seat today. You know, so I couldn't help but to sit here and say thank you, and thank you for showing a vulnerable side to you and allowing you into your life as little Bevy to now Bevy Smith.
Yeah.
And I wanted to take the time because we have a couple of audience questions.
Yes.
Yes. And then so we have a question from Farah. And Farah asks, given your experiences in life, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Oh, the advice I would give to my younger self would have been to dare to dream bigger earlier. So at 54, I am now pursuing an acting career. I did not even fathom something like that. When you read the book, you'll see even at the age of 33, I was suppressing my dreams. I knew I was unhappy, but I still wasn't dreaming big enough. I thought, well, I don't need to do this anymore. I need to find another corporate job and that will fulfill me. I was like, maybe I want to be a publicist. Maybe I want to be like an event plan, all these things. Like, what? No, girl, you don't want that. You want what you're doing right now, where you are a world traveler and you are a writer and you are a TV host and you're a radio host and now you're an actor. That's what you want. But I did not even dare to dream something like that until I finally quit my job at Rolling Stone and I was 38 years old. So I would say to my younger self, dare to dream big, bold, and audaciously.
Yes, I think that's also starts too by also asking little ones that are in our life, because too I'm so far removed what students are being taught in school nowadays.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if they're still being proposed the oh, do you want to be a doctor, lawyer, or teacher? But also, if you have little ones in your life, hey, have you thought about this? Or if you notice a talent, you know, hey, how about you do this more? And then encouraging those natural talents and those interests that little ones have. And it doesn't have to be teachers. It could be us.
Yeah. My nephew is super boisterous and just like the life of the party. I was like, we have got to get you into acting. Because why not? Like, that's all people do on set. When you go on set, people are like, are you ready to play today? And I'm like, yeah, I am ready to play. That's the best question I've ever been asked on a job in my life. Are you ready to play today? Hell yeah, I'm ready to play. Yes.
Yes.
It took to 54 years old to get to a set and someone asked me something like that.
Well, that's a great question. I'm about to start asking that. We have the next question from Jose. He is a big fan and loved Bevelation. So what was the catalyst for you to write the book? Any plans for a future book? And he's hoping that the answer to that question is yes for a second book. Which also, that's a question for me because I know you have a lot of other details about your life, but you said for a later book. So what's the tea?
I will write a book, a juicy tell-all memoir, Jose, later on, because it has to wait until people are like dying off. You know, I'm not going to write it while everyone is still very young and vibrant. Like I actually recently told a great DMX story on Twitter. It wasn't anything salacious, so I felt very comfortable telling it. But I have salacious stories, or I have like shady stories. I have a shady story about Jay-Z. I have to wait until later on. So that's when I'll write that question. And the catalyst for write that book. The catalyst for writing this book, Bevelations, Lessons from My Mother, Auntie, Bestie, was really based on folks wanting to pick my brain on social media. So I would get so many emails, like DMs and different things like that from people saying, can I pick your brain? I love the way you pivoted. I want to change my life. Can you help me? Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, no, I can't answer all these questions. And I can't meet with everyone for watery coffee and a hard scone. So we're going to do something different.
They're so dry. Yeah. Well, I look forward to that. Definitely sooner rather than later, but I could be patient. We all
Okay.
can be patient. And we have one more question. Please
We have
forgive
two
me.
more.
Two
Okay,
more?
good. She said we can do two more. Good.
Oh, yay! Okay. So we have one question from, please forgive me, Kaja. Bevy, what are your thoughts with the pressure of time and age? So perhaps you're having your greatest professional success beyond 40. And what are your thoughts on how to navigate that?
It gets greater later. My number one mantra, it gets greater later. Let me tell you something. Having this life, and it's so funny, I just reflected on this. Like, who would I have been? I was watching something and it was like a sexy love scene. And I was like, wow, I'm an actress now. I'm pursuing acting at 54. Probably won't have a chance to do that. And then I thought, but would I want to?
No.
But now with all of the experience that I've had in life, I'm so happy that I'm getting a chance to do all these different things now. Because in my younger years, I would not have been prepared to do it. I would have handled fame incorrectly. I would have squandered money. Not that I haven't, but I would have squandered far more if I had realized this kind of financial success later on in life. There's so many things that I would have done differently, including when I was at Vibe magazine and we would take rappers over for the fashion shows. I would have totally been sleeping with them because they all, most of them ask because they're just homesick and they just like a connection. I would have totally slept with them, Kaja. But by the time I got to Milan and Paris with all these hot, sexy rappers, I was a grown woman. And I was like, no, thank you. You don't shit where you eat.
Mm-hmm.
And you go back to your room, sweetie, because I'm going to go to mine. You have a good night. So, that's what age is. And then, just as far as all of my professional success, I think about creating my business, Dinner with Bevy. That business does not get created without me having relationships and advertising and marketing. So I needed all those years of experience to actually be able to activate that business. So everything is as it should be. Everything in your life puts you on the course. It puts you on the journey for what's next. And so for me, that's why I'm trying to remain open. We have a plan, but we know plans are subject to change. And when they change unexpectedly, and when they change sometimes not to our liking, we have to trust that we've done the work, we have done right by people, and that everything will come out as it should be. And there may be some hidden surprise that you didn't even know you wanted and or needed that will come out of that. So please don't be freaked out by the fact that if you're 40 and over and you haven't hit all your marks, because those marks might be changing. And that's something really important too. I know we have to wrap, but please, please, please do not hold on to old dreams. We oftentimes outgrow our dreams. I was just looking at someone's Instagram and she just got a really big job, an entertainment job. And I looked at it and for a minute I was like, wow, I should be like doing that. And then I thought, but no, I shouldn't, because I did that already. And I don't really want to do it. I don't really care that much about entertainment in that way anymore. So toodles, I'm so happy for you. I'm moving on to what's next. And I'm 54 years old. And I've got at least 2 more careers left of me. At least 2 more.
Claim it. Claim it. It is okay to change your mind.
Yeah.
Always. We have one question. I want to definitely give this other person an opportunity to ask. So we have one question from Neha. Neha says, I grew up in India, but relate strongly with your story. Thank you for sharing your message. How did you create financial support system so you can take big risk and live big dreams?
Okay, Neha. Here's the thing, my love. I thought that I had created a strong financial support system, but literally, I ran out of money in the middle of my journey. I quit my job at 38 years old. I did not get my TV show until I was 45. That's 7 years. That's a very long time. So, in the meantime, in between time, I went broke. There's a chapter in my book called Broke But Blissful. And I talk about having to stretch meals out of a can of salmon croquettes. I talk about having to go to housing court. I talk about no longer taking car services, and instead taking the bus. And what I will tell you is this. All of that journey, that entire time, I knew that it was going to pass. I also knew that at any time, if I felt like it was too much of a stress on me, I could go back and get another job. So that's the other great thing, Neha. Like if you decide that you wanted to try and do something new, you decide you want to try and jump out the window and become a helicopter pilot. If you decide to do something like that, you know you could always go back in a year or 2 or even 5, as long as you keep your relationships there, and get your old job back. So I knew that the entire time I was like trying to establish myself as a TV personality and as a writer. I was really successful at it. I was on BT and ET, and I was on VH1. I was on all those shows, and I was writing for Cosmopolitan and Essence and Glamour. And I was happy, but I was simply broke. And what I learned is that that's just a state of mind. So I couldn't go out and buy stuff, but I also didn't want to buy stuff because I was happy. Before I had been medicating with the stuff, right? The only thing I missed when I was in that journey of broke but blissful was I did miss being able to just get up and go and travel and take trips. But even then, I was able to find people that wanted me to write something for, like, travel magazine or something like that, or, that kind of thing. But yeah, that's the only thing I really missed.
And then didn't. Okay, go ahead, Bevy. I'm sorry. I read in that time too in your book, you had said you had taken the time to do other activities that you didn't think you would otherwise do, like hiking and exploring nature elsewhere, right?
Yes, of course. No, I mean, I discovered so much of who I was really meant to be in that time. I know now that, you give me a grassy knoll and a good blanket and a book, and I'm a very happy camper. And I have to say, living in New York City and working in this like high pressure world of fashion and advertising, I didn't have a lot of time like that. I also didn't even really own like comfortable shoes or clothes. I mean, I was always gussied up and always just very fussily dressed. And while that's very nice, for me, again, that persona had become a gilded cage. So yeah, I definitely thought I had enough money now I'd say, but I did not realize it was going to take a hot 7 years to make my dreams come true. But I'm so glad I stayed the course, because if I had gone back and gotten a job, I can only imagine I would own a beautiful Harlem brownstone and I would be alone in it and miserable because no one would want to come visit me because I'd be a rancid woman.
Yeah.
It just made me happy.
Yeah. With great risk is great reward.
Yeah.
We can always go back. We have, credentials. It will be easy to swing back into the thing. So thank you for that. And I have a question for you.
Or to create a new thing.
That the universe makes no mistakes. So definitely we need to trust the process.
Yeah.
And I have one more question for myself quickly while we have 2 minutes. What is your mantra for this year for yourself?
Ooh. It really is always it gets greater later. And the answer to that is I am charging full steam ahead at every single thing that scares me that I want to do. If I think I can't do it, I'm going to do it. Next month, later on this month, I'm going to be at the Moth. The big storytelling thing.
Yeah.
Well, you have to memorize your 4-page monologue. It's like 11 minutes of talking. I am scared to death, and I'm in rehearsal right now, and I'm terrified of it. And every other day I think I should cancel this. I'm not going to cancel. I'm going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a big part of my mantra. Everything that scares me, I am running towards it, and I'm going to do it. And that doesn't mean that you're always going to win.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other part. People always think that that means that's going to be a triumphant thing. It doesn't mean you're always going to win. I pray that the moth is triumphant. But even if it's not, the fact that I showed up and I did it is a triumph for me.
Mm-hmm. Yes, 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 yes. It gets greater later. I actually wrote 2 of those down because I'm adding them to my list of affirmations.
Thank you.
I want to thank you so much for creating time and space for us today. This has been more than a pleasure. And given this week's events, this is something that I was really looking forward to lift my spirits. So thank you so, 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 so much. And if y'all haven't read it, get Bevelations. It's going to be your first Bible, your second Bible. Get into it, read it. And if you're interested, definitely please check out Beverly Smith's one of her charity organizations, Cool Culture, and check that out. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Brittany, and thank you to all the fabulous Google folks.
Of course, yes. All right, we'll see you and chat soon because we know this is not the last of you. We're going to see you again.
Yes. Thank you, baby.
Of course, hugs. Bye.